There. Okay, now apparently I get to start over because technology, as I said. So welcome to our conversation about cultivating empathy. And if we haven't met, my name is Michelle Nagel, and I am known as America's #1 resilience expert. And resilience is really important because we often think of it as being, how our ability to bounce back from something that really bad that happens to us. But what it really is the ability to create uh, a reserve so that you don't get knocked down so far when a trauma happens in your life. So if you're able to build up resilience, it's like a battery. You've got this battery and your battery is probably running on empty 90% of the time. But this is a way for you to build up the reserves of resilience so that when you are hit by something that knocks you down, it doesn't knock you down quite as far. And so that's how I've been teaching people, helping people recover from trauma for the past 35 years, specifically childhood trauma and PTSD and betrayal trauma. And a lot of people think that betrayal trauma is not a thing, but it is. It's really huge. And a lot of us are struggling daily with having gone through a betrayal. So this topic on empathy, though, on cultivating empathy, is a favorite topic of mine because it's an emotional response. And the majority of times that we are experiencing something going on in our lives, it's never, ever on just one plane. So it's not like only an intellectual trauma or only a physical trauma. It always involves all of us, our intellect, our emotions, and our physical and our spiritual beings. So it's all encompassing. So I use as an example sometimes, if I walked up and hit you, all of a sudden, it's not like it would hurt, of course. And it's not like, ow, she hit me. And it's not like the only part of you that would respond is the arm that I punched you in, because your psyche would also be going, what the heck would she do that for? It's a violation. Why would I do that? So in that case, you can see that there's a physical, and there's also a kind of a psychic or a psychological thing that's going on there as well. Because you either, it's kind of like, we always look in on ourselves. It's like, what did I do to deserve that? Well, nothing. I was just, mean. But that's how those people, especially those people who are empathetic, will look at what is wrong with me. And so it's really important for us to understand how important empathy is and how to cultivate it. And also, if you happen to be an empath, which is something totally different too, how to shield yourself from other people so that you don't take on all of their stuff. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And then I've got a PowerPoint that I've got to come up here and let's see, helps if we can see the slideshow and play from the start. Okay, so, and I'm going to turn off my video so that you're not distracted with me hanging out in the corner there, but I'm still here, obviously. Okay, so we're talking about cultivating empathy. So how do you define empathy? Empathy, let's look at a couple of different definitions for empathy here. So according to the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley, empathy has different meanings to different types of researchers. Emotion researchers generally define empathy as the ability to sense other people's emotions, coupled with the ability to imagine what someone else might be thinking or feeling. Contemporary researchers often differentiate between two types of empathy known as affective empathy and cognitive empathy. Affective empathy refers to the sensations and feelings we get in response to others' emotions. This can include mirroring what that person is feeling or just feeling stressed when we detect another's fear or anxiety. And cognitive empathy refers to our ability to identify and understand other people's emotions. So to put it simply, empathy is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to feel what they are feeling. So I would kind of add to that definition, where they talk about the affective empathy is pretty much where they would say that you are an empath, because you can feel what the other person is feeling. You can feel it yourself. It's not like you're just trying to be understanding and compassionate. You actually feel it yourself. So if somebody is crying, sometimes you might cry as well, even though whatever it is had absolutely nothing to do with you. So empathy appears to be deeply rooted in our brains and evolutionary history. It's believed that we developed the capacity for empathy as a survival method. First, the need to be sensitive to the needs of offspring to continue the species. Second, survival has also been dependent upon the cooperation of other healthy, capable individuals. So, caring for others is just another form of fulfilling self-interest. Decades of psychological research reports empathy is so powerful that it overrides every rule about how to treat other people. So you'll notice that most of us rely more on what we feel than what we think when solving moral dilemmas. While ethical rules tell us when and how to apply our empathetic tendencies, the tendencies themselves have been in existence since before the creation of such practices. So, everybody will tell you how you're supposed to respond to somebody who's crying or who's upset. But, and so there is kind of a social construct that's built around somebody is upset, therefore we are supposed to respond to them. But long before that social construct came into place, it was a biological kind of way that we developed in order to be able to survive. So if somebody's upset or frightened or terrified, you find out what it is. You find out, oh, there's a saber-toothed tiger stalking them. Of course they're frightened. Now I'm frightened too. It's just, we've found many ways in which we are able to have empathy for other people. And again, when it comes to having children, you need to, kids, babies, they can't talk. They can't tell you what's going on with them. So instead of just guessing, you kind of have to instinctively know what it is that is going on with them. And that is a form of empathy. So is empathy purely a human experience? Well, the answer to that may surprise you. Pet lovers will undoubtedly agree that their furry family members do show tendency toward empathy. And second, survival has been and they're right. So research has revealed over the last several decades increasing evidence of empathy in other species, which I think is funny. They had to do research to discover that animals, cats and dogs especially, are able to understand their humans' feelings. We know that they can. Horses are incredible at being able to pick up on human feelings. Anybody who really pays attention to the natural world will know that that's true. So during a study on human development, it was unintentionally discovered that pets would react to a distressed owner. Research psychologist Carol Zan Waxler went to the homes of families, instructing people to pretend to sob, cry, or choke to understand how young children would respond emotionally. In the process, she discovered that pets were as worried as the children were, hovering nearby and putting their heads in their owners' laps. Another study involving rhesus monkeys reported monkeys refused to pull a chain that delivered food to themselves if doing so gave a shock to their companion. Primates were literally starving themselves to avoid shocking another animal. So that's like, primates, monkeys and things are very closely related to human beings. And so we see a lot of the same responses in them. But in order to not hurt somebody else, they would go without food. So psychologists have defined 3 distinct types of empathy: cognitive, emotional, and compassionate empathy. So cognitive empathy is the form of empathy is referred to as perspective taking, because it's the ability to see somebody else's perspective by putting yourself into somebody else's place. So therefore, cognitive empathy is done through thought, not feeling. How would I feel if I was this person? How would I feel if I was in their place? How would I feel if this happened to me? Emotional empathy is the form most people are familiar with, which is the ability to quite literally feel the other person's emotions. Emotional empathy allows us to understand and relate to others' emotion, and this type of empathy is common among caring professionals such as nurses, caregivers, coaches, people like that. This is where you can actually feel, physically feel yourself. It's like you take it on yourself and you feel it as well. And then there's compassionate empathy. So this form of empathy is both feeling somebody else's pain and resulting in taking action to help. So people who want or need your empathy typically don't just need you to understand or to just feel their pain. Instead, they need you to sympathize with what they're going through and help them to take action to resolve the problem. So this is more in depth. This is not only do I feel for you what you're feeling, I also want to help you resolve the issue that's causing you to feel that way. So here are a few favorite quotes about empathy. Resolve to be tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant with the weak and wrong. Sometime in your life, you will have been all of these. That's by Gautama Buddha. Now, learning to stand in someone else's shoes to see through their eyes, that's how peace begins. And it's up to you to make that happen. Empathy is a quality of character that can change the world. That's by Barack Obama. And peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. That is Albert Einstein. So the key aspect of empathy is that it allows us to empathize or feel what others are feeling. But what does this skill do for us? Well, imagine talking to a friend about something that you're experiencing. Usually, that friend will have some level of understanding of what you're feeling. However, imagine they have no way of imagining or feeling the situation you were describing to them. If this happened frequently, you probably wouldn't remain friends. Empathy allows us to connect with others. Without it, we wouldn't respond appropriately to situations. Empathy is strongly connected to social behavior. And so here are some important aspects of empathy we take for granted. Empathy allows us to treat people the way they wish to be treated. It allows us to better understand the needs of people around us, understand unspoken communication, understand the body language and other things going on. It allows us to deal with interpersonal conflict, and it allows us to perceive the world through different perspectives. So there's a lot of talk about narcissism and how narcissism is it's on the rise. Narcissism is the choice to not be empathetic. It's not, narcissism is a diagnosis in the, in psychiatrists' book, the DSM-4. It is a diagnosis in there, but it's not a chemical disorder. Like if you have depression or anxiety, that is a chemical disorder. And that's going to change the way you feel because you don't have the correct chemicals going in your body in the correct amount. But a cluster B personality disorder is an adaptation. Somebody has adapted the way they're going to behave or the way they're going to act based on how they're going to get their needs met. And so the individual who's a narcissistic individual is always a person who's working with a deficit, a personality deficit. They don't know how to experience empathy for other people, and they have decided that empathy is useless and worthless, and what they want to do is they want to take from other people instead. So empathy makes you a giving person, and narcissism makes you an incredibly selfish person. And it's important to understand the distinction when they say that a narcissist can't change. Well, they can, but they won't change for you. They change for themselves. They change when their pain, their own individual personal pain, gets to be too intense, but they're not going to do it for anybody else. So The key aspect of empathy that allows us to empathize with what other people are feeling. So let's talk about empathy in children. Bullying issues, in addition to narcissism, have increased over the years and can be linked to the lack of empathy. The lack of empathy isn't necessarily the child's fault. The environments we are brought up in, home and the classroom, can either provide an environment that condemns diversity or supports it. When children experience that they are not important, they are not heard, they are not understood, and they are not accepted for who they truly are, they become disconnected and learn the opposite of empathy. Bullies are often victims, and they try to make others feel small and insignificant as they themselves have been made to feel. Now, this doesn't make it, there's no excuse whatsoever for them being a bully, but again, it's a choice. It's that cluster B personality disorder. It's like, I can't get my needs met by caring about other people, so I'm going to be mean to other people. It's a very possibility that they've never, ever been shown how to be empathetic. Maybe they come from an abusive household where they've never experienced love and tenderness on themselves. So we live in a world where different is normal. Experiencing differences of ethnicity, religion, culture, gender, identity, and disability is a daily occurrence for most of us. Teaching children being different is not a negative thing and should be embraced is a big part of helping them develop empathy. Children learn empathy through sharing feelings with others and understanding others' perspectives and experiences of the world. So now that we understand the importance of developing empathy at a young age, let's talk about how to promote it in children. So creating an inclusive environment is key to helping children develop empathy. We can help through several techniques. So modeling how to value feelings by showing empathy toward children and others. Children learn by modeling our behavior. If they see us acting empathetic toward others and feel us being empathetic towards them, they can mimic this behavior. They learn it from whoever's raising them. Children sometimes need help identifying and expressing what they are feeling, and we can help them label their emotions. If we honor their emotions instead of shaming them or telling them that they don't know what they're feeling, then that will help them become such a better human being, because there are so many people who don't have the foggiest idea. If you say, what are you feeling right now? They will say, in all honesty, they will say, I don't know. And that is because they never had the emotions mirrored back to them, or they were told that their emotions were bad, and that because their emotions were bad, that they were made to feel that they were bad. So perhaps they were angry, and they may have been raised in a household where anger was not acceptable. And so they may say, oh, I hate my sister. And somebody would say to them, no, you don't. We don't hate in this family. Well, the child probably really did hate their sister right at that moment, that very specific moment. And those emotions need to be honored. They're neither good nor bad. They're a reflection of what's going on in the world. They are a barometer, if you will, for how we're feeling and what's going on. And if we honor those and not try to squash them down, we're going to be raising much healthier children. So connecting feelings to behaviors is vital so that children can understand cause and effect. This can be done through stories, play acting, asking questions, and connecting scenarios with the child's own experiences. Engage with children in activities that require working together. This will encourage children to be empathetic and understand others. Learning through the act of doing is helpful for children when developing empathy. That's why I absolutely love these parents who love to do service for other people, and they take their children along with them so that the child can feel those feelings of, those good feelings of, yes, I've done something wonderful for somebody, and look at that, isn't that cool? It makes me feel good. It's important for a child to learn that. To develop more profound empathy skills, let's take a moment to understand what empathy is not. As we know, empathy is the experience of understanding another person's thoughts and feelings. This can often be confused with sympathy or compassion. Now, sympathy is the feeling of care and concern accompanied by a wish to see them better off. Sympathy, unlike empathy, does not involve a shared perspective. I can feel sorry all day for somebody else without having the slightest idea how they feel. But facial expressions of sympathy can convey caring and concern, and they do not express shared distress. So compassion is more involved than empathy and is associated with an active desire to alleviate suffering. So compassion is, I guess, the active form of empathy. I see how distressed you are. I'd like to help you make it better. So while empathy, sympathy, and compassion relate to each other, each is distinct. So to put it easily like this, sympathy is, I care about your pain. Empathy is, I feel your pain. And compassion is, I want to take your pain away. So there's three differences there. So in order to cultivate empathy, there are two key characteristics we will focus on: active listening and self-awareness. So active listening is a communication technique requiring full concentration, understanding, and response from the listener. Active listening helps cognitive connection, thereby can be utilized as a technique to boost empathy. So here are 6 strategies for cultivating empathy through active listening skills. First, practice non-judgment. You may not agree with what's going on in somebody's life, like they may have made a really stupid choice that got them in the circumstances that they're in right now. But if you can actively listen to them without judging them, without making them feel like you're sitting there with your white curled wig and gavel and going to pronounce some sort of judgment on them because they did something, but just listen with love, with non-judgment, with not trying to make them bad. Number 2, ask the right questions. And ask the questions in the right way. So rather than saying, why did you do that? Which would be something that would put them on the defensive. You could say, I'm curious, what were you thinking when you did that? That then is helping them look more into the process of why they made the choice they made. So the other one also is use body language. So you can pretend all day long to be compassionate and empathetic and listening to people, but if you're standing there with your arms crossed and your foot tapping, you're not being truly empathetic. You're being impatient. You're being judgmental. You're being, and people are going to pick up on that because 75% of all of our communication with each other is nonverbal. And then you validate their emotions. And then you also find comfort in silence and paraphrase what it was that they said. So paraphrase it and repeat it back to them so that they know that you really did hear what they said. Sometimes you can say, well, what I hear you saying is, I personally don't like that because that's kind of like formulaic, but it is important to repeat back to them what they said and help them understand, not like you're judging them again, but it's like, so what I'm hearing is, and something like that is a little less in your face, I guess. So creating an environment that is free of judgment is the first step to actively understanding a person's situation. Judgment creates a barrier and prevents connection. Simple techniques for being less judgmental include awareness. We need awareness to observe and identify thoughts. Once we are aware of thoughts, we can identify when our thoughts are judgmental and stop such thoughts. So I was trying to have a conversation with someone a long time ago, And I'm trying to, draw them out. I'm trying to listen to what they have to say. And all of a sudden this thought popped in my head. It was like, Michelle, you don't like this person. And it was like, wow, that's interesting. Where did that come from? And then I was able to explore my own feelings about what was going on. And because I didn't like that person, I wasn't being empathetic. I was being fake, 100%. So I do my best not to do that now. Understanding. When we catch ourselves being judgmental, we can redirect our thoughts to try to be more understanding and imagine what somebody else may have gone through. Acceptance. Once we have an understanding of what someone else has been through, we can begin to accept people without trying to change them. After all, the only thing we truly have control over in this world is our own abilities, our own thoughts, our own actions, our own beliefs. Those are the only things we have any control over. The rest of the universe is going to go off and do its own thing. We only have charge over ourselves, and we don't have control over what somebody else is thinking, feeling, or believing. Love follows acceptance. Loving others has a twofold effect on both your happiness and the recipient. So the next step in cultivating empathy through active listening is to ask questions without coming off as being judgmental. So asking somebody, why did you do that? Why, what were you thinking? The why is an attack. It's defensive, is something that would require them, or that would set them on the defensive. So instead use open-ended questions. An open-ended question requires a more thoughtful response than merely answering yes or no. If you're only getting monosyllabic, single word answers away from people, yes, no, then ask open-ended questions so that they have to give you more information. So rather than asking why, rephrase questions as what, how, when, or where. For example, instead of asking, why don't you go see a doctor? The question can be phrased as, have you thought about seeing a doctor? Communicate less about what is being said and say much more about, and concentrate much more on how it is being said. So reading body language is an essential part of empathy. Gestures such as eye contact are useful for letting others know that you're listening and engaged with what they are sharing. If you have difficulty making eye contact with somebody, that's because you are experiencing discomfort. You are most often experiencing shame and you're not happy with yourself if you can't make eye contact with other people. Making eye contact is really uncomfortable. It's a vulnerable thing to do. But if you make eye contact with somebody, it's like, okay, so there's a story of a woman who was going to see a psychologist, and the psychologist had heard the same story, which the woman was really struggling with. And she'd heard the same story over and over and over again. As the woman launches into the story, the psychologist starts thinking about the bill that they forgot that they have to pay. Oh yes, after this session, I have to make sure I pay the bill. And the woman stopped talking and she said, where did you go? Your eyes went away. You just shut the windows of your soul. So people are able to tell if we're actually truly connecting with them by whether or not we make eye contact with them. So body language, as I said, makes up 75% of communication. And because body language is usually a subconscious reaction, it tells us more about what a person is saying than the words they are speaking, making body language the most reliable indicator of what other people are really thinking and feeling, despite what they might be saying. So if somebody else won't make eye contact with you, it's because they are so uncomfortable. They are feeling vulnerable, they're feeling shame, they're feeling embarrassment, they're feeling probably less than. So not only can you use body language to convey your empathy, but you can also read body language to learn how and when to be empathetic. To convey empathy through body language, maintain eye contact. So this assures the person speaking to you that your focus is on them. Turning your body in their direction also shows your interest in what they are saying. Nodding is a small gesture to show that you're listening without interrupting with verbal cues. And you can also mirror the speaker's body language to show that what they're saying is relevant and important. So do you practice those things when you're speaking with someone? Are you talking, I mean, how often has this either happened to you or have you done it to somebody else? You may be talking, having a conversation with them. Perhaps your body is not turned towards them. Somebody else comes up, starts talking to them, and they immediately disengage from you. It's like they're maybe even mid-word. It's like, oh yeah, I need to, oh hi, how are you? So it's like, wow, how can you possibly convey you have no value more than that? That's an incredible thing that happens quite frequently. So are you guilty of doing that yourself? So we all seek validation. But emotional validation is particularly important when it comes to expressing empathy. Acknowledging a person's emotions lets them know what their thoughts and that their thoughts and feelings are real. So start by listening and responding in simple terms. For example, say things like, okay, and I see, to convey that you are hearing what somebody is telling you. It's essential to put aside your own discomfort when someone you care about is opening up and sharing something that may be difficult or unpleasant. Focus entirely on being there for them with gentle physical contact, such as hand holding, maybe back rubbing, maintaining eye contact, or simply telling them, I'm here. You can help validate what someone's feeling by saying something like, I imagine you're feeling pretty hurt. And when appropriate, you can recall a similar experience to show that you really do understand their emotions. You can normalize their reactions by saying something like, I think most people in that situation would feel that way. Silence can be uncomfortable, but it's a valuable tool that can be used in cultivating empathy. Silence can create space for the person to think when in a situation that is difficult to talk. Don't imagine automatically that somebody's having a senior moment and can't come up with a word. It doesn't always mean that. Sometimes it means that they're trying to come up with the right word to accurately convey what they're feeling. Silence is the best policy when experiencing awkward tension. Silence will help you avoid filling space with distractions or making off-topic remarks. Practice getting comfortable with silence if it is something that you currently avoid. Allow yourself some time to explore the use of silence in conversations, as well as understanding how you feel about it. If there's an uncomfortable silence, if you are uncomfortable being silent around people, then you might want to explore your relationship with those people. So it shouldn't come as much of a surprise that self-awareness is that self-awareness is a significant component of empathy. Understanding our own emotions help provide us a window into somebody else's emotions. So paraphrasing is a great way to let somebody know that you're following along with what they're saying. Restate their emotions or ask clarifying questions to signal that you're listening to them. Summarizing their story at the end of the conversation can help a person feel heard and appreciated. You can say things like, wow, I really understand that you'd be really upset with somebody who did whatever it is they did. Just kind of paraphrase and repeat it. So try this example so what I'm hearing is that you felt maybe upset, hurt, scared because this, whatever it is, happened. Is that correct? Having an empathetic conversation can't be rushed. So therefore, practicing active listening skills can easily be a skill that you carry in your empathy care kit. Now, it shouldn't come, again, as a surprise that self-awareness is a significant component of empathy. Understanding our own emotions helps provide a window into somebody else's emotions. Underneath us all, regardless of what size, shape, or color we are all very, very much alike. We all need the same things in order to thrive. We all need the same nurturing, tenderness, caring, food, shelter. We all need the exact same things in order to feel safe, to feel heard, to feel needed and important. And so if you're not aware of your own needs, if you're not aware of your own emotions, if your emotions have been shut down, maybe you were one of those kids who was told that you weren't allowed to have certain emotions. Doing your own work so that you can understand what your emotions are will help you be much more empathetic to other people. So 2 different studies questioned participants about their emotional self-awareness and their empathy. The results for both groups were exactly the same. The more self-awareness students demonstrated, the higher their cognitive empathy. According to one of the researchers, emotional clarity and cognitive empathy may be associated because both constructs involve identifying and describing emotional experiences of oneself for emotional clarity and of others for cognitive empathy. So the question becomes, do you know how self-aware you are? Let's take a look at a few methods for improving self-awareness to help you cultivate empathy. Increasing self-awareness is a key to cultivating empathy skills. So to increase your own self-awareness, try the following strategies. Number 1, look at yourself objectively. Number 2, keep a journal. Number 3, write down your goals, plans, and priorities. Number 4, perform daily self-reflection. That's self-reflection, not self-beating up. Number 5, practice meditation and other mindfulness habits. Number 6, take personality and psychometric tests. Number 7, ask trusted friends to describe you. And number 8, ask for feedback at work or from your family. Avoid correcting somebody's thoughts and avoid phrases like, that's not worth getting angry about. That's your judgment on their experience, because they are angry about it. So obviously it's worth it to them. So don't do that because it comes off as negating their feelings. Avoid providing unsolicited advice. Most of the time, people are just looking to be heard. Listen carefully to what is being said before offering advice. And if you're unsure, it's okay to ask if they're looking for your opinion or just needing to vent. So say something like, would you like my advice? That gives them the opportunity to choose whether they want it or not, as opposed to you just shoving it down their throat. So the phrase that I use most often is, may I share something? That way they can say yes or no. So avoid making comparisons when you're trying to validate somebody else's feelings. You can't always offer validation in the form of personal experience because you may not have experienced what that person's going through. However, you can still provide validation by acknowledging what you are hearing. So it's also really important to not get in the habit of trying to one-up somebody. That's when, oh, I know how you feel. And then you launch into your own story about how yours was so much worse. That's not helpful and that's not empathetic. So while they may understand, okay, this person has had a betrayal, for example, this person has had a betrayal as well, therefore they know that a betrayal hurts, maybe they know what it feels like, but they're not listening to me. It's more about them. And so that's not an empathetic response. Avoid blaming somebody for the feelings that they're experiencing. Statements such as you're overreacting can come off as you telling someone their feelings are not valid. You're overreacting is something that you probably heard if you were ever in a narcissistic relationship. They're telling you how to feel. They're telling you that you shouldn't feel the way that you do feel. That's called gaslighting, and you don't want to do that to somebody else. So avoid trying to fix how they're feeling. Wanting a loved one to stop hurting is normal, but not allowing them to process their emotions will not help them feel better, and it will make their problems last longer because the more you stuff your emotions, the more they're going to bubble up and come out at inappropriate times. So I know that we just went over a ton of information. The main point to take away is empathy is more than sympathy. It involves feeling what somebody else is experiencing. And you can cultivate more profound empathy skills through active listening and improving your self-awareness. Empathy is something children can learn through participating in inclusive environments, gaining acceptance and appreciation of diversity, and experiencing empathy from loved ones. And in the case of when you've got two kids, if they're fighting with each other or something like that, you can take them and say, how do you think Bobby feels? And how do you think Rachel feels? You know, how do you think the other person feels? And have them think about that. How would you feel if that happened to you? Those kinds of things are ways to be able to help children understand and develop empathy. We need more empathy in the world. We need people who care more about how other people are feeling. We can tell because of the way the world is right now that there is so much. We're breaking up into tribes. We're breaking up into groups of people who are not empathetic and not understanding and not compassionate towards other people. And it's time for us to heal the world. And the way we can do that is to teach empathy to our children, and we can also cultivate it in ourselves. So thank you very much for taking the time to have my class today, to join me on my class. I really am grateful that you were here. I hope that you learned something. Like I said, there are some things, sometimes people, those who are empaths, they take on too much of other people's stuff. And especially energy workers, body workers, masseuses, people like that, they have a tendency to take on the stuff from other people. I had a woman who wrote me a letter and said, you know, I don't understand. I feel like I'm overwhelmed all the time. I just feel like this barrage of emotion. And when I'm around other people and I walk into the room, it's just like this incredible heavy weight, and I don't know what it is. And I said, you're an empath. So an empath takes on all that stuff. And so there are ways to shield yourself from doing it, but you can only shield yourself when you're actually truly in tune with how you're feeling and what you're doing. It's important to have empathy and to be able to feel what other people are feeling, but it's also really important to make sure that they keep it. You don't take it on. You don't, their problem doesn't become your problem, and it doesn't make you feel weighted down and heavy and overwhelmed all the time. It's when you're able to ground yourself, to meditate, to what I like to do is and I also ask people to do this, is imagine a bright white light coming down from the divine heaven, the universe, whatever you want to call it, and surrounding you like a shield around you. And that white light, that bright white light, is love, it's compassion, it's empathy, but it protects you from taking on too much of other people's stuff. And so thanks for coming. And if you have any questions about this, please reach out to me. You can reach me at Michelle, with 2 L's, at isoulshift.com. And I would love to hear your comments. And if you have any questions, please do reach out to me. And you can also go to my website, which is www.isoulshift.com. So I'll talk to you next week. I'm sorry, not next week, but next month, with a new webinar. And thanks so much for being here. Have an awesome day.